The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to the budget webinar will be presented by Jim McGann, Vice President of Marketing. Jim will be also present architect at Index Engine.
Thanks, Jen. Thank you all for attending today's session. Today we're talking about what's near and dear to many people's hearts is IT budgets and how you can help reclaim some of those budgets through wasted storage capacity, or reclaiming wasted storage capacity, I should say. My name is Jim McGann with Index Engines. I'll be joined today by Greg Jorgensen, who's going to go through a product presentation, demonstration, and answer any questions you may have. If you have questions, you should see a chat window over on the right side. Chat window on the right side. I'm hearing the audio is breaking up, so hopefully this will be better. Someone can let me know if it's better. That'd be great. And you can ask questions there. And you can also send an email. There's my email address on the screen as well. You can send an email to us, and we'll take those questions offline. Okay, hopefully we fixed the audio. It's better. Thank you very much. And let's get going. A quick introduction about Index Engines for those of you that have not worked with us in the past. We supply enterprise-ready information management solutions and archiving platforms. Some of the unique features is we provide intelligence across all classes of storage. I'll talk about that during the session. Not only your primary storage, but your secondary and backup storage. We can provide a level of knowledge of that content in order to manage it more effectively. Most of our customers are using us really to find data, profile data, and manage enterprise data assets. Today we're talking about data profiling. The applications are really supporting information governance down to information management to storage management activities. And that's done through a very uniquely scalable and high-performance technology platform, which I'll introduce you to during the session, that is very cost-effective and rapidly deployable. So the challenge that most of you on this session are facing in your data environment is that it's complex. I don't need to tell you that. You guys know it. You live it every day. There's significant volumes of data across user networks and servers. That data is locked away in proprietary repositories. Email is proprietary. Backup's proprietary. All sorts of containers that exist out there, not in addition to the loose files that exist, the user-generated Word documents, PowerPoint, spreadsheets, and things like that. Most organizations save everything. I mean, storage is cheap. I mean, how many people have heard that phrase? So if it's cheap, just keep on adding storage and saving everything. You've got decades and decades of user files that have been hoarded on your networks and servers for a long, long time. And you know, the IT organizations have really been charged with saving everything, you know, making sure everything's available, saving it, and in doing that, they create copies, copies on backup, copies in archives, and nothing is purged, nothing is deleted. They also provide users with power. Users can create files on user shares. We have customers that have, you know, hundreds of terabytes, if not petabytes, of data stored on user shares. Mystery data, have no idea what that content exists. Users can also archive data. So if you can create PSTs on your desktop, those are little mini email archives that exist on desktops or on servers and are completely unmanaged. The general challenge is there's a lack of knowledge. You know, as the data ages, it becomes more difficult to find and manage. I mean, sure, the stuff you created on your desktop last week, you can pretty much get your fingers on it and find it. But the stuff you created and shared with some users on a shared server 2 years ago, it's very difficult to find that content and to leverage it, to understand it, even get rid of it if you wanted to get rid of it. There's really no master directory of files and emails that exists. Some quick statistics from our friend at Gartner Group. Right now they're saying that enterprise storage growth out there is anywhere from 40 to 60% annually. So we talk to many, many customers every day, and the 40% number seems pretty conservative. You know, we hear 50% year-on-year storage growth. upwards of 100% year-on-year storage growth. So I think these numbers are pretty conservative. So depending on what your situation is, you have a good idea of how much you're spending in terms of increasing your storage capacity. One of the more interesting quotes, again, from Gartner is that through 2013, they're saying that 95% of all information management programs that exist in a corporation will rely on IT reducing costs and managing information risks. So that's the classic doing more with less scenario where their organizations are charging IT or groups with managing information much more effectively, so risk is controlled, so data is secure, and it's not going to escape your firewall. It's not going to get into unknown hands, and to do that with less budget. So that's the challenge that we continually come across is that customers are struggling to do do more in terms of their records and information management with less IT resources, people, and budget. And one of the more shocking statistics, which is from the Compliance, Governance, and Oversight Council, the CGOC, it's a very interesting paper, and we can get you a copy of that, is that 69% of the information that you're storing on your networks today has no business or legal value. So, almost 3/4 of your data that's sitting on your current network storage has no purpose in life and could easily disappear tomorrow and no one would miss it. So keep these statistics in mind as we go through the session. So I want to introduce a concept of data profiling workflow. Data profiling is really a new area that allows you to get a really good understanding of your content. It really talks a lot about metadata. So metadata is the data about data. It's your dates, when stuff was accessed, created, modified dates, owner, who owns it, where is it located, all sorts of stuff like that. That's really valuable for you in terms of deploying, archiving, and information management strategies. So in data profiling, a typical workflow would be you need to scan the sources. So you need to create the profile itself, which is really an index of the metadata content. So you're going to scan data sources using high-speed indexing technology, which we'll show you today. And the data sources that exist out there are typical user shares, departmental servers, email environments, and even backup tapes. So one of the unique features here of the Index Engine's data profiling platform is that it can support the indexing and profiling of your legacy backup tapes without having the original infrastructure in place. So what you're going to do is really think about that stuff. So if you have some pain points, and a lot of people have pain points around user shares. You've got hundreds of terabyte servers of user shared data that's pure mystery data. You have no idea what's there. There's a lot of hidden liability in that content, or just it's just stuff that's taking up space and you want to know whose it is and what it is. Or you have a departmental server. It could be your research and development department. It could be your HR department. It could be your legal department that have lots of sensitive data. You have no idea what's there. Or it could be your legacy backup tapes. That's stuff that's burning a hole in your IT budget. It's stuff that's being stored out at Iron Mountain or Recall or offsite storage that you have no idea what it is, but you know that pretty much most of it is useless. So you need to scan these data sources. So this, the data profiling platform we're talking about today has the ability to scan all these sources. And in doing that, what it's doing is generating a rich metadata index. Okay, that's the index that's going to be used as the foundation for data profiling. It could be incrementally updated, kept up to date, so it's fresh, fresh and current. But it's something that's going to occur in the background within your data center that happens automatically. Once you create that foundation, you can leverage that index to extract file and email metadata information from that unstructured user data. So things like dates. So one of the more popular data profiling queries that would exist was, when was the stuff last modified? Show me all the stuff that's out there that has been modified in 10 years. Is that interesting to you? What would you do with that stuff? Or access date or created date. Show me who owns what. So you have user information. So for files, who's the author or the owner? For email, the to, the CC, the BCC. Location, path. Size is very important here, obviously. That's going to determine what's taking up capacity. You also have backup metadata, too. So you can look at backup sets, backup dates, backup hosts. So if you're looking at tapes, for example, you can find a whole pile of tapes that have backup dates that are maybe a decade old or 10 years old, and any retention or regulatory policy is only up to 7 years. that allows you to determine the disposition and say, hey, you know what, I really don't need to keep that because there's stuff on there that's out of any kind of regulatory or legal requirement dates for my policy. So again, scan the sources, leverage all this rich metadata, and then you can start doing some analysis. So one of the really unique features of the Index Engine's data profiling platform is the ability to combine queries or filters with reports. And we'll talk about that when we get deeper into the session here, but that allows you to make decisions about the data. And the decision's really about the disposition of the content. So again, early on I said 69%, according to that report, of data has no business or legal value. What would that mean to your organization if we could delete up to 70% of the data that's currently existing on your servers and networks? That could give you a free year of storage. It'll free up significant resources. You'll be basically an IT hero by having the ability to do that. So in terms of the workflow here, scan the sources to create the index. Check out the index and start querying it and looking at the different types of fields that are available, and then start doing your analysis on the content. And we're going to spend some time, and Greg's going to show you some detailed demos on how that works. So in terms of disposition, there's three things that we see that are pretty common. Managing data in place is one. So that's typically on your more current content, the stuff that was created last week, last month, last year. It's stuff that's actively used. It's current working documents. So you really don't want to move that stuff. You want to keep it in place, but you want to monitor it. So being able to monitor that content in place and figure out if something has to happen to it. So maybe it ages out to 3 years or 5 years or 7 years, and when that trigger is hit, you're going to take action on it at that point. But right now, the profiling platform, the data profiling platform, has the ability to monitor data in place. And when certain criteria happen, maybe it's owned by a certain person where there's some kind of legal hold request. Maybe it's owned by a person that's left the company, and you want to move all their data and archive their data. Maybe it's part of a certain project that's been retired, and you want to kind of archive that and make sure all that data is in a secure place. So this is really what the statistics are saying accounts for maybe up to 30% of the data that's on your network today. Archiving is a popular disposition strategy. A lot of people want to move data to an archive. And a lot of people in the past have been archiving everything, saving a copy of all the email and all the files without applying any policy to it. It's great for your storage vendors because it's replicating your storage. Not so great for your IT budget because it's really creating copies of data that really you don't need to create copies of. So what you want to do is just be selective about what you archive. Your intellectual property, content with business value, any legal compliance or regulatory or e-discovery content that's of interest to them. And that could, by the statistics we see, is about 5, 6, up to 10% of the stuff that's out on your networks today. Remediate is the big ticket here. So that's where you're going to get your big win and your big return on recouping your storage capacity and your IT budgets. So if you can remediate, some of the analysts are saying you can remediate up to 70% of what exists out there today. Maybe you're not that aggressive. Maybe you can remediate half of that, 35% of what's on your networks. That would still be a tremendous cost savings for your organization. And that's really the stuff with no business value, stuff like ex-employee data, stuff that's aged out of any kind of usefulness in its life. So, the key here with data profiling is finding that stuff. Data profiling makes finding that stuff easy and a no-brainer. So this is the Index Engine's platform. Our product line is called Octane. This is our data profiling engine. It's a server that would sit within your corporate firewall, so it's secure. It only has access to your data, secure access to your data. It's very high-speed data indexing platform. No one is faster on the market today. It supports high-speed up to 1 terabyte per hour per node indexing. And you have to realize it's only doing metadata indexing, and it's only going to scan each file once. It incrementally updates itself and so on. So it's very efficient. It's purpose-built for enterprise-class environments. Our customers' profile is anywhere from a Fortune 10 financial services company down to Fortune 2000 manufacturing organizations to high-end manufacturing organizations. So it's a wide spectrum of organizations that exist out there. Provides access to all data sources. I mentioned our unique access to legacy data on backup tapes. So we really crack the format of backup tapes from NetBackup to Commvault to TSM, ArcServe, HP Data Protector, IBM's TSM, that we understand these backup tape formats can get inside that proprietary container, index the internal contents down to the file and email level, and allow you to profile that. So some of the projects that we see here is around remediation of those legacy tapes. So if you've got tens of thousands of tapes stored in offsite storage, data profiling is a really great tool to be able to understand what's on those tapes and remediate them to recoup that offsite storage expense. So, in terms of reclaiming storage capacity and expense, we're talking about not only your primary storage, but your secondary storage as well. And finally, it's very cost effective. I'll talk about some of the pricing scenarios that we have towards the end of the session, but it's very easy to deploy. And one of the things that works out really well with our clients is you can start small. You can pick a user share file server or departmental server and start with that. 50 terabytes, 100 terabytes. Start profiling, and then by putting in these these nodes you can expand your implementation and start small and grow. So here are some tech specs of the platform. It's a 2U Linux-based rack-mountable server. It's got 8 terabytes of onboard storage. A single engine can support up to 1 petabyte of metadata indexing. So it's incredibly scalable and incredibly efficient. So one of those boxes can support the processing and indexing of 1 petabyte of content that exists out there, user files, unstructured data, email. There's 72 gigabytes of memory on the box. It's got a fiber and SCSI connection, typically to support to things like tape libraries and tape drives, and a network connection to connect onto your network. Again, it's very high-speed indexing. It's beyond any kind of indexing platforms that you've seen on the market to date. It's designed to be low impact. Again, 1 terabyte per hour per node. Your networks may not be able to support that level of crawling and speeds, but it has multi-stream processing that allow you to have 10, 15 different jobs running at the same time in order to process significant volumes of data. Again, incremental updates, supports NFS or sys crawling, or you can leverage NDMP if you've got an NDMP-enabled filer out there for high-speed processing. One of the more important specs here is that it supports Active Directory and LDAP integration. So you're going to log in and connect to your Active Directory environment, and that'll determine the permissioning on the documents, which we'll see as you see document owners will be determined by this by Active Directory there as well. And there'll be a lot of advantages that we'll be incorporating into the profiling engine with Active Directory as we move forward. And you can back it up. You can back it up using Linux commands. Some of our customers, instead of storing the index content on the server itself, you can store it on external storage that's backed up and protected by your organization. So there's a lot of flexibility with the deployment of the profiling engine. So in terms of once you scan the data, what's captured in the index itself or on the engine is very rich metadata. And this is really going to be the core of the platform and what you're going to be querying against. So there's user file metadata, which is things like dates. Dates are one of the more important fields that people leverage for profiling. So last modified, last access, when it was created. So access and modified is critical to really determining business value. Are users leveraging this content? Has it been modified? Has it been accessed in more than 10 years? And they'll allow you to make some decisions about the content. The size of the files, so for PowerPoints, for images, for multimedia files, for spreadsheets, what's the size? And that'll help you determine the storage capacity that's being utilized. File name and path, so you know exactly where it is. Author or owner of the file, so you know who owns it. Signature is generated at the time of indexing, so that's an MD5 hash algorithm that's going to determine is the document exactly duplicate. So if you've got a Excel spreadsheet or a contract or an email that exists out there, that signature will determine if it's exactly the same signature. It'll tell you that it's the exact duplicate of its counterpart on the network. So you can use data profiling to say, you know what, I can point to that server and say, what's the % of duplicates that exist on that server? So if you've got a 50 terabyte server and 30% of that content is redundant duplicate data, that could help you reclaim capacity right there. Email, you've got metadata fields like date, sent, received, deleted date. You've also got to from CC BCC fields. You've got mailboxes. So if I just say I want to just find what's in John Doe's mailbox or where John Doe's mailboxes exist out there or folders, I could do that. And again, the signature here for duplicates. And then there's also backup metadata as well. So backup time, server, volume set, and so on for backup data. So you can start querying this content and say, tell me what has not been accessed in more than 7 years. It's going to rely on the date field of last accessed. Where's the data owned by ex-employees? So, as your employees leave the organization, you may wipe their desktop or their laptop, but their stuff is scattered all about your network on shared user servers and filers and so on. So where is that stuff? Where's John Doe's email? Sounds like an easy question, but when you're in an e-discovery event, is it in John Doe's mailbox? Sure. But is it in other people's servers or desktops or all sorts of locations? Of course it is. So when legal asks you where's John Doe's email, you can come back with a more comprehensive, accurate answer versus just guessing that it's in John Doe's inbox. What data am I archiving on tape that's more than 10 years old? So if your retention or regulatory or legal requirements, only go back to 7 years, and you've got tapes that go back to 10 years, can you easily just discard those or shred those tapes without any concern of defensibility or legal getting down your back? So metadata is going to be your friend here. So, again, the metadata signature field, what data is duplicate out there? So you can really rely on this to ask questions of your environment. And this is the knowledge that you've never had before at this level to be able to start making decisions about content. So in addition to the metadata and the reports, we've got also these queries and filters that you can run. So in terms of the indexing platform, you can turn on 2 different options. One is metadata only, which is very common. It's a very high-level view into the data. Or you can do metadata and full content. Full content is going to go inside files and emails and attachments and index the words that exist there. So for some organizations, that's important. And why would that be? So they may want to do a full text search to look for any kind of intellectual property, any documents or contracts or agreements related to the Jones Project, for example. That could be a keyword search that would be important to them. So they would need full content processing in order to do that. Another example is a PII audit. So PII for personally identifiable information such as Social Security number and credit card numbers. You may want to query inside email. For example, your customer service teams, are they sending out emails that contain that sensitive information with customer addresses and information as well? So you would need a full content data profiling platform to do that. There's also, in terms of the queries, you can query on file properties, you can filter on email properties, backup properties, and more important locations like specific servers, the specific backup tapes, desktops, emails, and so on. So you could do specific queries like perform a PII audit. Tell me how much risk do I have out there in my email server in terms of sensitive data? Where are all the PSTs located? So are there PSTs located throughout the network environment, and where are they? What data is on the user shared server? So you can point to a specific server. A user share is a common one. It's kind of a junk drawer of data that exists out there. What's on there? And start asking questions on that. What backup tapes contain email data? So all sorts of queries and filters can be applied. So you can get the idea of these queries and filters combined with these metadata summary reports is really where we're going to take in terms of the data profiling platform. So here's some examples of some of the dynamic reports that can be generated. And there's no end to the flexibility and what you can generate, and Greg's going to show you a couple of possibilities. But for example, if you're looking for age data, so your filter could be, point to a user share server. So point to a server called, Acme. On that server, generate a report that's data was last accessed in 5 years. And your action could be move it to a cloud. This is a tiered strategy, moving it to less expensive storage. And this could happen in a couple of clicks of a mouse. Ex-employee data. So you could upload a list of owner names and say, all these owners are no longer with our organization. Where's their data? Which data of theirs has not been accessed in 7 years? So they may not be an employee, but other users may be using and leveraging their data. So you can say, these are all ex-employees. This is the data that of theirs that hasn't been accessed in 7 years. I'm going to delete that. No one's going to ever miss that content. And we see environments where that could contribute 40% of your storage capacity right there. Departmental data. So we get a lot of requests for, we've got projects, maybe it's in a research and development project, and if I use a specific keyword, again, Project Acme, for example, I want to archive all that data related to that project, archive it off, and get it off the network and secure it. So I have, for regulatory purpose, I need to keep it in a secure location. Multimedia files is another one. So a lot of the stuff that you're storing on the network and also backing up and protecting and so on could be personal multimedia files from your users, iTunes libraries, the full set of Star Wars movies, all that stuff that has no value to your organization, and possible liability because it could be copyright infringement. So you can do a query on video and audio file types and say who owns it and what capacity is that taking up. And then you can notify those folks or notify their manager that, hey, you know what, these people are storing way too much stuff on there, and this is the profile of what exists. PI audit I mentioned earlier, so you can filter on, find any data that has Social Security and credit card numbers. Who owns it? Are there a couple of culprits out there that are violating our policy and spreading that information? And where is it? And my action is going to be encrypt that content. And then finally, another example, and these are just examples. I mean, you may have a million examples in your head that I haven't even thought of here, but another common one is managing PSTs. PSTs are mini email archives that are pretty much out of control and kind of a liability to your organization. So you can filter down to the file type of PSTs and say, show me where all the PSTs are out there. Who owns them and when they were last accessed. So, if one wasn't accessed in more than 5 years, it's kind of an abandoned one that's just sitting out there and nobody knows that it exists. So you can build a strategy to manage that and determine what kind of policy you're going to implement around that. So leading into the demo here with Greg, this is an example of a workflow, and this example is age data, the common one. So you can go in there and the location filters, you can filter on locations. You can check specific servers that you want to clean up, and you're going to automatically generate the report. This one's on last modified time. So you can figure out that this big chunk here in red hasn't been modified in more than 5 years. You also have stats here on the capacity, so 42.31% of the data on the servers or the servers checked hasn't been modified in more than 5 years. And this is demo data, so it's only taking up 57 gigs. Yours may be 57 terabytes of content that exists there. The next step is you can filter that down by just unselecting everything and just select the 5-year bucket and say, I just want to go deeper into this. So you can see here these charts that are generated are dynamic. You can go in and use them for filtering as well. So I unchecked everything. I'm just going to say, just show me the stuff that hasn't been accessed in more than 5 years. And you can get this report here that shows who are my culprits, who are the data hogs here. So you can see our good old friend David right here is the biggest culprit. He's got 63% of that stuff. And, you can look, here you can go and notify him. If it's an ex-employee, you can kind of dig deeper into it. So again, you can see you can go through an iterative process through these dynamic reports to kind of start analyzing this content. So, for data analysts, this is a great tool to sit there and get the tools they need to make decisions about the content. So what do you do from there? So there's a lot of output here. So right now, with the data profiling platform, you can generate a CSV text file that's going to give you the full path and the full file name. So you could use all sorts of tools out there to purge the data, move it, copy it, encrypt it, and so on. The release is coming out shortly. It's going to have the ability to, it's going to have a delete button built in, so you can press the delete button and automatically delete that from in the platform. But here today you have output of it, of all the detailed information you need to take action on that content. So I'm going to move over to a demonstration with Greg. He's going to take you through the product, and then we'll come back and wrap it up. Again, if you do have any questions, feel free to ask questions, and we'll take them at the end of the session. So here is Greg.
Hi, my name is Greg Jorgensen. I'm one of the solution architects here at Index Engines. So as Jim explained, I'm going to walk you through some of the user scenarios here to show you what the user experience would be like when using the Index Engines interface. So first, I'm going to walk you through a search here. Going through the Preferences tab first. At the time of search, there's a couple of different important preferences that you should be aware of. These work off the metadata attributes that Jim described earlier in his slide. First one is around suppression filters. This is simply deduplication of your data if you want to get a deduplicated view of your environment. We deduplicate by content, which is that signature Jim discussed, the MD5 hash value. You could use that in combination of the MD5 alone or the MD5 with a path. We also can keep files within owners or across owners, depending on what your query is needed for, as well as filtering out system files. So there's an option here to apply the current NIST list to filter out common system files. Going to the search screen, the left side of the screen here is all about building that the custom query that Jim described. The right side is all about viewing your results. On the Reports tab, that's going to be reviewing your results in our Interactive Reports option menu here. So my first scenario I'm going to walk you through is similar to one of the ones Jim described in the menu, but again, I want to show you the user experience that you would have when interacting with our search interface. I'm going to go to the File Properties, and I want to look for files that are last modified from prior to January 1st, 2006. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to type right in the query. You could use the calendar feature, or you could type directly in. So I'm going to type in 01/01/2006. And I'm going to run my search on all of the data. So I'm limiting my data from any data created last modified prior to January 1st, 2006. I click the search button. It's going to update that summary report you see on the right here. So this is going to give you a whole host of summary report options. So first, I might want to see the file extensions for data prior to January 1st, 2006. As I scroll down, as you see here, it's an interactive menu, shows you a pie chart of that breakdown, as well as a more detailed view below that. You could also switch to some of our other reports, such as maybe sizes. I want to see the size of data. So if I look at the size, same thing. It's going to show you that interactive pie chart up top here with a list below. So for this scenario, maybe I want to identify the really large files to see what is the makeup of these large files, who owns the data. So I'm going to go here and go right down to the bottom. I want to look for data here that's maybe bigger than 1 gigabyte, or let's say bigger than 128 megabytes. I'm then going to run my search. Going to update with that criteria. And then I can go here by host to see who the owners here, to see who the owners of that data is. Well, here, David Wright. I know David Wright is an ex-employee. So then I can go create one of those CSV files that Jim discussed earlier with a file path and file name, so we can take action on that data to either move it to cheaper storage or to delete that, whatever the actions needed for your policy. So I'm going to walk through another scenario here. I'm just going to create a blank search. It's going to search all of the data that's on my index. On this scenario, I'm not limiting it to a certain last modified data. I'm just creating a blank search. It's going to search everything. It's going to show me all of the data in my index segments. So again, I'm going to go to the size report. I'm going to click down here. It's going to show you the sizes of that data. Maybe for this scenario, I want to look at the really large files. So I'm going to, again, deselect all my options. I'm using the interactive features of our reporting to further cull my data set. And let's say I want to look at data bigger than 8 gigabytes here. So I'm selecting these really large size categories. I could then update my search. I can go to File Types. And I see here, oh, there's PST data. Well, let's say for this example, I know my policy does not allow PSTs in my environment. So I want to see who the owners of that data is. So I could then use that interactive feature, further call my query here. I'm going to select the PST files only, update my search. Now I want to see who the owners of this PST is. So I'm going to go to the owner report, say, oh, Shane Victorino. So now I can go back to Shane, and with the report, I can go to the Results tab here and see the actual metadata attributes on these two files so we can get some information on where they are housed. So I can go here to the file path, and I see it's on the 101 server. It's in a subfolder called Collection of PSTs, and then Outlook 2003. So that's going to provide me with a detailed report then that I can go back to the user with and apply that policy of eliminating PSTs from my environment. I'll hand this over back to Jim again.
Thanks, Greg. So that was, a very quick demonstration of some of the features. I mean, there's a lot to it. We're happy to go deeper into it for those of you that want to have a more in-depth dive on the technology. But some of the sample workflows that we see that are very common, one of the biggest ones is age data cleanup. So I know a lot of you realize that you're storing a lot of data that has no value, and it's really finding separating the useless from the good, and we can help you do that in very quick in a very quick turnaround. A data tiering, moving stuff to cheaper storage. If you've got stuff that's stored on very expensive primary storage, you could leverage cloud environments. You could leverage cheaper storage platforms out there to kind of migrate or move data over and kind of organize it that way. Managing large files like multimedia files, which we showed you in the demo, PI, audit, email PST management. A lot of our customers are just concerned about PSTs that exist out there. We had a client that had a policy that said they were not allowed to store PSTs. They had IT organize the environment to lock down Outlook and their desktops so that users couldn't create PSTs. We did an audit using a data profile on their network and found that they had tens of thousands of PSTs that existed out there that they weren't aware of. You can also do storage capacity allocations and chargebacks. So if you want to know which departments and which groups are using how much data on the servers and so on, you can use it for that. So common workflows here around data profiling. So this slide is pretty important. It's showing the enterprise data retention requirements. And again, this is from this organization that exists out there, which is the Compliance, Governance, and Oversight Council. And you can Google them and get more information on them and follow those guys. But this is, based on their research, they're showing that in terms of what data has any legal hold requirements, it's typically 1% of what exists out there. And we typically see a lot of it is around email. You may have 10% of your employees have some kind of legal hold requirements around that. So it's it's a very small piece of what exists out there in terms of your entire storage environment. Records retention requirements, that's based on your policy, is typically 5%. Data with business value, that's the more current stuff that you're working with, 25%. And data that could be defensibly deleted, 69%. That's the bulk of it that exists out there. So in terms of archiving, it's really this stuff. It's 6% of data that exists out there that has to be archived for long-term retention and management. 25% of the stuff that you want to remain in place but keep track on in order to determine if you what policy, what disposition is going to happen of that content. And again, your mileage may vary here, but what they're saying is that upwards of 70% of what exists in your network could disappear tomorrow, and no one would miss it at all. So the thing is also, if your storage growth year on year is 60%, then you could basically get a free year of storage because you could clean up that much, you can free up that much capacity, and not have to buy storage for a year. So if you want to make impress your CIO saying, I can give you a free year of storage, here's how, this is the approach. So some advantages here is really, it's obviously better insight into your corporate data assets, understand what you have, allows you to streamline your storage capacity by getting rid of unnecessary data. Legacy tape remediation, I talked about, it's kind of another side project there in terms of your backup tapes, but data profiling allows you to understand what's on them instead of having complete mystery of that content, and manage a remediation project, which we do a lot of here. Improve support for legal and compliance. So when legal and compliance comes to you asking you for, I need that file or that email or that mailbox, you know exactly where it is based on the data profile. Knowledge to really help you define policies. So a lot of companies may be refining their policies, redefining them, updating them. With a data profile, you can really understand what exists out there. And it's hard to define a policy in a vacuum. So with the data profile, you know what you have, and that allows you to help define those policies. And really just finding and manage data more effectively in general. So what's the return on investment? How are you going to justify this technology? Is, some people get to the first bullet and are able to justify it on this first bullet alone, but how much are you paying for storage? What's your storage growth year on year? And sometimes some of these organizations are just tired of upgrading their storage, even though, the storage is cheap. It's not really that cheap when you come to look at it. So what are you paying for storage? You're paying for storage growth. What are you paying to back up and manage that storage? So even if you're paying, per terabyte feed it just to add storage, you got to back it up, you got to manage it, and so on. There's a lot of added costs that are associated with it. How many legal and compliance requests? How often are they asking you for data, and you have to search for that needle in the haystack and find that content? How do you manage sensitive data related to projects or critical data, from your key thought leaders in your organization? What's your archiving strategy? Some people are developing archiving strategies. How can you develop it without knowing what you have? Have you faced data breaches? Data breaches is really data that's not managed properly is escaping your firewall and getting into the wrong hands. So do you want to be in that position, or would you rather know what you have and where it is before you face those embarrassing breaches? How you manage security policies, how you do policy audits. You've got policy. Are you sure users are abiding by policy? Can you audit your networks and your data to determine everything is being managed properly? We see a lot of mergers and acquisitions these days. So as you're merging and acquiring companies, you acquire their data. How do you consolidate data centers and migrate environments, in different platforms? Understanding what you have allows you to do it much more effectively and efficiently. So some examples of some of the return on investments, and those are the kinds of questions that we work with customers on and clients on in order to understand how to justify data profiling within their environment. So getting started, what's the next steps? We're wrapping up here. We're at our 40-minute mark here. Two areas, I think, and we're happy to talk to you in detail about that. We can do a proof of concept here. Start small. So, you're not going to sit there and data profile your entire infrastructure and network. You can find a user share server, a departmental server, or some area that you feel has, would generate a good proof of concept, and with mystery data, and it could be 10 terabytes, it could be 50 terabytes, it could be 100 terabytes, and process that. So by bringing the Index Engine's data profiling platform in-house, the pricing starts at $1,000 per terabyte. That's for a metadata-only index. If you want full content, it's going to be more than that. But most people start out with a metadata-only index. It's $1,000 a terabyte plus the hardware. So the hardware you just buy once, and you can upgrade. Again, I mentioned earlier that it supports up to a petabyte of data, so you have a lot of growth capacity on this single box. So the hardware is $13K, so you can get started pretty inexpensively. Most of our customers can get started for less than $50K on a small proof of concept. Another option that's significantly cheaper is use our cloud lab. So we have a lab in our headquarters where you can send a recent set of your backup tapes. So the interesting thing about backup tapes, it's a snapshot of your network, your corporate network. So if you send a recent set of your backup tapes on basically a set number of servers or a large number of servers, those can be processed off the tape in order to create the data profile, which is a nice non-invasive way of doing it. No network crawling or anything. You just send those tapes to us, $150 a tape, send 10 tapes, 20 tapes, and we will generate a profile report which will be deliverable back to you. So much cheaper way to get started, and that way you can see how the technology works and get an idea of what exists out there and understand who owns what type of data, and so on. We can generate all sorts of kind of iterative reports on that data. So very inexpensive way to use our cloud to get going, or you can put a proof of concept on site and get going, start indexing it and scanning your data sources as well. I have a great white paper here that I wrote, just happens to be great, but it talks about how to use data mapping to manage liability and reclaim storage capacity. I'm happy to get that to you. My email is there on the screen, so shoot out an email if you like, or call us. Our phone number's there as well, and we will get that out to you as soon as possible. We also record this session, so we can get you a link to the recording if you want to share it with your colleagues, or if you just want to talk directly, we're happy to do that. So I know we're up at our time limit, so we won't have time for any questions today. If you did ask a question, we'll get back to you offline and answer you one-on-one. Otherwise, I just want to thank you all for your time today. Appreciate it, and hope you found this session to be of interest. Thank you, and have a good day.